Se você pensa que não conhece Nicholas Sparks, aí vão algumas dicas. Diários de uma Paixão, Querido John, Noites de Tormenta, são alguns dos filmes inspirados em livros escritos por ele. Um dos maiores fenômenos de vendas dos Estados Unidos, Sparks começou a escrever quase por acaso. O amor é o tema constante na obra deste romancista, que nasceu na noite de Ano Novo de 1966 e vive na Carolina do Norte. Seja o amor à distância de Querido John, ou o amor paterno de A Última Canção. O primeiro a chegar às telas foi Diários de uma Paixão, dirigido por Nick Cassavetes. Desde então, o escritor se tornou sucesso de bilheteria, frequentando também as listas dos livros mais vendidos no Brasil. Nicholas Sparks é o convidado de hoje no Espaço Aberto Literatura. So you started to write almost by accident when you've been injured in your first year of college.
Yeah, I loved running. Running was my biggest passion in life, like football in Brazil, right? That's all I wanted to do, go to the Olympics, take the victory lap. Didn't work. Got injured, and my mom just got tired of me pouting around the house because I was very upset, and she said, well, don't just pout, do something. And I'm like, what? She's like, I don't know, write a book. And I did. I sat down and wrote my first novel. I was 19 years old. It was terrible. I look back at it now. I can't even read it. It's so bad. But it was something that I'm glad I did, because 10 years later, or 9 years later, when I sat down to write The Notebook, I already knew that I would be able to finish it and that I would enjoy bits and pieces of the writing process along the way.
But you always, ever since you wanted to become a writer, but you came a long way to become one, right?
Well, it's interesting, you know, yes and no. I mean, I wrote that novel at 19. Until then, I'd never considered becoming a writer. I loved to read, but I didn't know if I could write. Writing's hard, you know, and I knew it was hard back then. So I wrote a novel at 19, never published. I wrote a second novel at 22 that was never published. I co-wrote a book with Billy Mills when I was 25, and then I wrote The Notebook when I was 28. And yet, although it seems like I'd been writing for a while, in between those things, I didn't write anything. I didn't write a newspaper article. I didn't write a letter to the editor. I didn't write anything.
But it was your last try, you said. It's my last try.
Well, it was. I said, I kind of had a midlife crisis at 28. I don't know if we have these in Brazil.
Early, but it's early.
It was early. It was early, right? It was midlife. I was like, what am I going to do with my life, right? I had a wife and kids, and it was good, but I just didn't feel like I was chasing a dream. And so I said, okay, what can I do? And I said, I know, I'll try writing again. And I remember I was 28, and I said, I'm going to give it 3 chances. I'm going to give it 100% effort on 3 books. And if none of them get published, well, then I'll know I'm not meant to be a writer. I can live with failure. I just didn't want to live with the thought that I never really tried. So I said, okay, come up with a story, and I did, and the first one took off.
And you did come up with a story. How do you get inspired?
Depends on the book, and it depends on where I am in my life. The first few novels were really inspired by events in my family. The Notebook was a story that was very much inspired by my wife's grandparents, and Message in a Bottle was inspired by my dad after my mom had passed away. Walk to Remember, that was my 3rd book. That was inspired by my sister and her battle with cancer. So early on it was a lot of family, but now, let's say Dear John, that was inspired by an image of, that one actually was inspired by the film Casablanca, one of my favorite films. And I said, gosh, I would love a modern, updated version of that. Others might come from images or people that I've met. I don't know where they come from now.
You say that sometimes you go like, what if?
That is essentially how I come up with every story. And you ask yourself, what if 1,000 times or 10,000 times? What if she's 28? What if she has two sisters? What if she gets along with one but not the other? What if the one that she doesn't get along with is dying? What if there's this guy? You just ask yourself, and then you get kind of along in the story, say, nah, that doesn't work. Okay, let's change it all. What if she's 38? What if she's got a 19-year-old? What if? And so you just keep asking yourself all these what ifs about who they are, what they do, what's their relationship, and then little by little, some combination of ideas finally strikes me as, aha, that's correct. That's the story I'm going to write. And it can take a long time. It can take up to 3 or 4 months to go through all the different questions.
You didn't mention The Rescue when you're talking about family inspiring your books. You had a great story about that.
Yeah, The Rescue, and that's it's still my agent's favorite book, by the way. It was a story that was very special to me. It was my 4th novel, and it was really inspired by my wife and I. And I guess you'd say the situation with our son, because he didn't talk when he was young, and then over the next few years we were told he was everything from autistic to that he had Asperger's to that he was profoundly retarded, and we just didn't know what was going on. And so The Rescue was really a story about my wife and I and the fears we had and the work we were doing with our son. And he's now fine. He's 17, drives a car, goes to a very good school, not a special school. I mean, it's a college prep, hard academic school. And he's a good kid.
And I read that you read like 120 books a year. Is that so?
Yeah, I read at least 125 books a year. It's about 3 a week. That is one of my passions in life. I read. I'm one of those people who read if you're exercising and you need a 1-minute recovery period, I'll read in that 1 minute. If I'm driving my car and the light turns red, I'll read. I mean, if I go out to lunch and my wife goes to the bathroom, I'll read. I mean, I read all the time. I just find it very enjoyable.
And you usually say that Stephen King is your idol.
Yeah.
Are there love books, love novel writers that you admire as well?
Well, I mean, it's a very old genre, so you've got a lot of great writers throughout history that have, done this. Shakespeare did it, and Aeschylus did it. That's one of the Greek tragedies. Jane Austen did it. Hemingway did it. There've been a lot of great movies too. So it's hard to say who's better, Hemingway or Shakespeare. I guess you might say, well, it's Shakespeare or whatever, but it's kind of a personal preference thing. So yeah, there are a lot. I've learned from all of these people, and I'm certainly not saying that I'm comparable to any of them, but I'm doing my best, we'll say.
And it's funny because your love stories are full of U-turns and setbacks, and your own love story with your wife doesn't look like, full of trouble. You were married like 1 year after you met, but there's always a story about letters, right? You wrote 115 letters for her.
Yeah, my wife and I, we met when I was a senior in college, and she was a senior in college at different universities. And we met in spring break in Florida. And I don't know if you know about American spring breaks. It's like carnival, I guess. It's so much fun, right? Had a great time. But I met her, and I knew she was the one that I was going to marry within a day of meeting her, and I told her that. And of course, she laughed at me. But after the end of the week, she had to go back to her university. I stayed at mine, and so I wrote her a lot of letters. Remember, this is before emails, and your phone calls were still expensive back then. You didn't have cell phones. So I wrote her about 150 letters, and I guess that was, we met in March. She moved out to California, and I proposed in October, and we were married the following July.
And how do you know that a book is going to work? It's going to become a bestseller? Is there a formula?
There is for a lot of writers, yeah, and there are certainly some of elements that in my own novels that tend to be in every one of my novels. There's always, for instance, a love story. It's always set in a small town. The characters tend to be flawed but likable. And other than that, though, I try to vary as much as I can. I think to answer your question, the best way to say it is it's almost an instinctual thing. I get asked that question and I never know how to answer. Even while I'm in the process of writing it, I'll write it, then I'll read a paragraph or two and I'll say, that's wrong. I don't know why it's wrong, but that doesn't work. And then I'll just start changing words and changing sentences and editing and editing and editing. At some point in time I say, aha, now it's right, now I can go on. But I don't understand that process at all. I mean, every time I sit down to write a new book, I say to myself, what am I doing? I don't know how to write a novel. I know I've done it before, but I don't know how the creative process works.
And how does it become a good movie? Is it different to be a success in a book and in a movie?
Yeah, it seems like that happens to a lot of authors, that they get films made, and it's really actually very rare. There's something like 5,000 novels published in the United States every year, and then you have 100 movies made, and only 10 or 11 are based on novels, because you have all these screenwriters. So it's kind of rare, and I think that my novels are successful as adaptations in Hollywood because there's not a lot of other writers writing the same kinds of stories that I do. So they just fill this little niche in the market of people that like this particular kind of movie. And that doesn't mean that I could do one of these every month. The market would die. That's why they're about once every year, every 2 years. It's a small market, but it's a good one.
Is there a favorite film or a favorite book for you?
I don't know, not necessarily.
Really? Sure?
No, but I can answer it in a different way. I think that of all the films that have been adapted from my novel, the one most likely to be considered a classic in the long run would be The Notebook. And that's just because in the United States, at least, it's on every week on one of the numerous cable channels we have. I mean, TBS and TNT and Lifetime and Oxygen and Bravo, they all buy it and they all say we're going to run it 8 or 9 times a year. And so it's literally on every 2 weeks. It's on like these Christmas movies during the holiday season. And so it's very widely known. And so I think The Notebook will be probably remembered so far longer than any of the other.
Oh, I get it. You guys do love each other. Oh, I get it. You guys do love each other.
Is it your favorite movie?
I don't have one. I mean, they all
Really?
mean something to me. Message was so exciting because that was my first one. And then A Walk to Remember, that's the kind of movie that I want my own kids to see growing up because it's just got such great, great values. And Nights in Rodanthe was so passionate and so real because this is really about adults. And it reminds you that love can happen at any age and that it can be just as passionate at any age. So I've been happy about all of them.
Amanda! Can't even hear myself thinking here. What?
Tell us about this Epiphany School that you set up, that you have the kids travel to 26 countries
Yeah.
when they graduate?
No, it's
all over their years.
Yeah, if you come in as this is a school that my wife and I founded. It is we live in a small town, about 30,000 people, and there's only one high school in town, public high school. And it's okay if you're a certain kind of kid. It's okay for most kids. And my oldest son went there, and he was happy. But there are other kids who don't want that. I mean, it's a kind of a rough school, and it's in the rural South, and the education isn't great. So my wife and I, we decided to found a school. It's Christian, but you don't have to be Christian to go there or even teach there because we don't teach any doctrine. It's more about be a good person in life. It is college prep in that we really try to get the students ready for very challenging colleges. And then it's really centered on global travel. And that's important to me because I've had the good fortune to travel around the world. I've been to so many countries, and every time I go, I learn something new, which is why I'm very much looking forward to going to Brazil, because I've never been there. This is going to be new. I'm excited. And because I know how important that is, I want to share that. And remember, I live in the rural South. There are kids in my town who never leave the state of North Carolina. So they come in as a freshman, and we travel them around the world, a week and a half here, 14 days there. So by the end of their 4-year high school period, they will have visited about 26 countries on 6 continents. They will have spent over 200 days abroad. They'll be fluent in Spanish. And this is really important in today's day and age because the world is becoming more global and interconnected, and it's just a great education.
It's a great experience.
Yeah.
In some of your books, there are loves that challenge all the odds, distance, time.
Sure.
Do you really believe in this kind of love, and why?
Whenever I write a novel, my primary goal is to just write the most interesting and enjoyable novel that I can. I don't know that it necessarily goes to my beliefs, although I do believe that love, everlasting love, is possible. I think that, I don't believe that it's always, the passion is always way up here. I think if you're married for a long time, the passion goes this, and then it goes up, and then it goes down. And that's part of just the cycles of life, so to speak. But I do believe that there are people who, love each other forever. And maybe the love changes from when they're young. It's full of passion and excitement. And toward the end, it's full of comfort and familiarity. And which one's better? There is no better. It is what it is. It's love, and it does this.
But sometimes in your books, people live apart for a long time, and then they become together. So when it happens in real life, sometimes it doesn't work.
No, of course. Nothing is ever perfect, but in my novels they are. That's why people love them. They want to believe that's possible. And it is. It may not be possible for you at this point in time with this person, but it's always possible.
Today it would be easier with email and cell phones and Skype not to write letters.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be easier to keep the distance and keep the love, the relationship?
Yeah, it's funny because I have email, and my son does Skype. My oldest son is away at the university, and so he gets on Skype and he talks to his siblings, his brothers and sisters, and his mom. But when I talk to Miles, I write him letters.
Really?
Just old-fashioned letters, put the stamp on, he goes to the mailbox and he opens them up.
And he enjoys it?
I would think so, because no one else is writing him letters. It's always fun to get mail in the mailbox. And so so that's what I do. I probably write him 1 or 2 letters a week and just updating him on what's going on, and that's what I do.
But for your for your books, if there were emails and Skype and
yeah, it's not as romantic as a good old-fashioned letter. Come on, you got to see the handwriting and the scribbles and the scrawls. You got to know that he had that in his hand, not just run through a printer.
But what makes you write about couples that live apart for part of the novel?
Well, what you want to do whenever you create a novel is, or at least what I want to do, is to make it a little bit different than anything I've done before. So sometimes couples get together and then they stay together. But other times, for instance, in Dear John or The Notebook, they're driven apart. That's kind of one of the elements of any successful love story. And I certainly didn't invent this, but it's essentially that if there's no conflict, there's no story. You've got to have something that keeps the couple from being together. Sometimes that's distance. Sometimes that's Garrett Blake can't get over the death of his wife in Message in a Bottle. Sometimes it's I can never imagine myself with a girl like that, like Landon Carter in A Walk to Remember.
Or The Family.
Right, or The Family. That was Romeo and Juliet, of course. Even Shakespeare, the conflict. And so you need something, and my goal as a writer is to, I guess, explore all of those different conflicts that keep people apart so that the novels continue to feel fresh and original.
And how young people react to those love stories where the lovers are apart from each other?
Oh, well, a lot of them feel so sad. They get all these letters, like, why would you do that, right? But I think most people realize that this can happen because this is a very common thing. For instance, you might have in high school boyfriend and girlfriend. But now, once they go off to the university, they go to different places. Or where I live, it's a very military area of the country, so soldiers might get shipped off, whether it's a man or the woman, and then they're not together. So you've got school reasons, you've got the family might just be moving reasons, you've got economic reasons, military, all of these different reasons that can create this distance, and then you either overcome it or you don't.
What do you think that has in your novels that touches everyone's hearts?
I think it has, and I'm guessing here, this is based on the letters that I have received from people. I think it's that they like the characters and they relate to the characters. That's partly it. Number two, the stories feel very real. They don't feel like a soap opera or a Hollywood movie or novels that maybe other authors write. These feel very real because they're very ordinary people. I write about students, or I write about a soldier, or I write about a police officer or a teacher. Just very basic, ordinary, non-glamorous people. And it doesn't matter whether you're glamorous or exciting or not. Love is still a wonderful emotion.
I just wanted to ask again about your trip to Brazil. Why did you decided to go now, and what do you expect?
I get invited to go to most of the countries that publish me, and obviously if I went everywhere, I'd never have time to write, so I have to pick and choose my trips. I have never been there. I've got a lot of fans in Brazil. I mean, I don't know why, but I'm very popular there. And so it's a way, I guess, to meet a lot of the readers, ask them which stories they like, sign their books, get photographs with them, of course, talk to different people in the media or whatever they have me do. It's funny, every country does different things when I go on tour. Every country has their own system. For instance, if I go to Italy, I never do any book signings. No book signings. In Germany, if I do them, they're massive productions, they're on stage, and I've got German actors, and I read in English, and then they read in German, and that's what I do there. In Poland, I do no signings. So every place is different. So I guess what I'm saying is I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in Brazil. It's whatever my Brazilian publisher thinks is best. I'm sure it'll be a combination of interviews and maybe going to some schools and maybe some book signings and whatever they need.
And have fun.
And have fun. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It actually doesn't matter where it is in the sky or where you are in the world if you hold your hand up and close one of your eyes. It's never bigger than your thumb.
Where'd you learn that?
I don't know.